Hi, my name is Jason Thurston. I live in the Adirondack Mountains of New York State in the middle of a 6 million acre forest preserve. I care deeply about being outdoors. I use a power wheelchair and I work for accessible campground, which has 3.5 miles of smooth, hard packed trails that I like to go as fast as I can on, and it's quite the thrill. Before my accident, I was a chef. I had just been hired as a chef instructor at the college that I went to. I'd been married for 10 years. I had two children, ages 4 and 13. Life was good at the age of 31. It was August 2nd, and I was having a party at my house. I had several friends and family from far and wide. There was a bunch of kids in the pool, and I had been diving in, and I'd dive underneath and pulling their legs and mess around with them and toss them around. And then I'd get out and jump back in and do it again. And one particular time I didn't quite dive as shallow as I should have and hit my head on the bottom. I proceeded to immediately drown and had to be resuscitated. I didn't wake up until after my accident, after 7.5 hours of surgery in the ICU. It was quite confusing because my mind wandered to a place where I felt the warmest embrace, and I felt like I could go if I wanted to. And then I thought of all the reasons I had to stay, my wife and my children and my parents. And when I came to, I was confused about that as well. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was in intensive care for a total of 2 weeks. I had collapsed lung and double pneumonia and was on a lot of medications. So I guess I wasn't thinking too far forward in the very beginning. I was just trying to get through the initial stabilizing phase. I wasn't told a lot at first about what function I would or wouldn't have. It was kind of a wait and see and do tests. But I did have an occupational therapist come visit me when I was in ICU, and I'll never forget this. She stared me straight in the eye and she said, "For the rest of your life, you are going to have to be your own advocate. You're going to have to speak up for yourself. And if you don't, things aren't going to get done." And that resonates with me still today. It was so sobering because I was laughing and telling jokes. And on some level, it was a way of distracting. On some level, it was a way of making the people that cared about me or that were taking care of me that I was okay. Obviously paralyzed, but I'm here. I'm alive. I have my wits. I have my brain. I'm grateful for all those things. But also the experience that I had that made me feel like I was given a choice had a big impact. I had been such a workaholic in kitchens, for so many years without much of a break. So I really tried to look on the bright side of things. And in the sense of the great work ethic, as things progressed, I realized I have a long battle to climb to get as independent as I can. I've always been a worker, so this is my new job. 9 to 5, work hard as you can, do as much as you can, get as better as you can. I'm a C6 incomplete. My movement is limited to above my chest. And as far as sensation goes, because of the incomplete nature, there's spots that I can feel, but it almost seems like my body's rewired itself. So if I touch myself and see it, I can almost feel it, which is kind of strange. When I first came to in ICU, all I could move was my bicep. After several sessions with an occupational therapist using electric stimulation, I was able to regain tricep movement and then the wrist flexors as well. Depending on others was very tough. I needed help getting pushed into the shower. I needed setup for my bowel routine, but I was pretty independent with that. As far as getting dressed goes, I always was able to dress my upper body, my lower body, not so much. Just that whole routine, depending on somebody, became frustrating after a while. I had been getting transportation from the local independent living center. And eventually they asked me to be on their board, on their advisory board. We were very new, so we had board training, and I learned all about the inner workings of that. And I was hooked. I mean, helping other people and getting more involved with the disability community, I knew that was my next thing. And it wasn't long before I was hired, and I worked there for several years. One of the first projects we took on was called the Tourism Accessibility Project. being in a high tourist area. Lake Placid was one of our areas to cover. Along with that, I put together a presentation about what an independent living center is and how the independent living center helped me through various things, and went around to different organizations, different disability places, nursing homes, and the like, and delivered these presentations. I also had the opportunity to go to the National Conference for Independent Living down in Washington, D.C. People from all over the country with all kinds of disabilities, and assemblies and speakers and workshops, not to mention being able to march on the Capitol and go visit with your senators and talk about different laws. It was really empowering, and I really found my tribe. I used to work with the chef at the last restaurant that I worked at, and him and I used to go boating and ice fishing, and he stuck around after my accident and was determined to get me back out ice fishing. So he built me out my own personal ice shanty that was on water skis that he could drag me out onto the ice, had a little heater compartment in the back. He also got me onto his boat, and we would go out fishing all the time, devised this system of stabilizing me with a board tied to a thing that went over the vest. And he's also the one that took me camping for the first couple of times. So getting outdoors and getting back to those things that I loved before, and just being in nature, that is what really helped me feel alive again. I got a lot of support from my family. Family members I hadn't seen in years stepped up and would come visit me and call me on the phone. As far as my relationship with my wife, that was a whole nother challenge. I essentially pushed her away because I didn't want her to have to live with this too. And as far as overall friends, I definitely don't have anywhere near as many of the same ones, but over time, you meet new friends. Ever since my accident, my biggest challenge has been transportation. At one point in time, I did have a van that I could drive that was modified just the way I needed it to be. Then it failed inspection because the frame was rusted, and now it just sits in my backyard. So my hope is that I can get another vehicle that I can drive, and that I can travel to all kinds of outdoor destinations and be able to expand on what is accessible in the outdoors, not only in my area, but beyond. The thing that I'm most proud of is that after about 14 years, I was able to live by myself. I had finally figured out how to wash dishes and cook and even load my wood stove. Not to mention all my personal care, the campground that I worked at, I figured out how to camp by myself. When I reached that point, when I knew that I could get out there in the wilderness and cook for myself and be okay and not need anybody's help, hands down, most proud. If you find yourself in this situation, it's important to remain patient and know that things will get better. You're going to have to adapt, and there are things you'll be able to do, but maybe not the same. There are things you're just not going to be able to do anymore. But there are new things you're going to be able to do, and new ways that you can use your perspective, and perhaps a newfound level of empathy, and perhaps a new angle on helping other people that can pull you through it. People told me when I was in ICU, you'll walk again. And I was like, okay. Not that I didn't want to, not that I didn't want to believe, but at the same time, I really didn't feel that was going to happen. It's so much more than walking. The more is being able to do things that everybody else does, to have a family, to have a job, to have a home, to find fulfilling ways to feel productive and impactful. If you can focus on those things as opposed to walking, then you'll be okay.